Hey, I'm Sam. Welcome to Brickwall Pictures. Today we're here to talk about Nathan Fielder's new show, The Rehearsal. This is actually part 2 of a discussion. Make sure you check out part 1 for a kind of overall broader discussion of Nathan Fielder's entire oeuvre. But just like last time, I'm joined by Greg, who is also a Nathan Fielder fan.
Hello! Yes, I'm a very big Nathan Fielder fan. Please watch our last video.
Yeah, there's a lot of context to be gained from that first part. And we also talked a fair bit already about The Rehearsal, like as we were covering other topics, like we talked about Nathan Fielder's screen persona and like some morality things, which are interesting. So I will say there are a couple, this video is going to be specifically a review of episodes 1 and 2 of The Rehearsal, which are the only 2 released at the time of recording.
Maybe we'll make a regular thing of it. Maybe we'll, I don't know if we haven't really talked about it yet, but maybe we'll do like each episode perhaps.
Yeah, and so I will say, just in case you are going to skip that first part, we did already talk about a few moments in quite a lot of detail, like we talked about that moment in the swimming pool where the old man comes through. So like we won't like rehash that discussion, but yeah. So The Rehearsal is his new show. It's on HBO Max. It's an HBO Max original, whereas before.
And thank God he's on like a strong platform.
Yeah, he's not on one of these streaming services that can like disappear overnight because like no one's on it. You know, he's not on a Quibi or like even like
he's not on
Peacock or
Yahoo.
some stupid shit. You know, yeah, he's not on Yahoo screen. You know, you got a good platform on HBO Max, and his other show that he produced, the How to with John Wilson, is another HBO Max original. So I'm glad that he's like finding a home there. Nathan Fielder is also connected to another show that's in the works that I think is a scripted thing that has Benny Safdie, who's one of the Safdie brothers that made like Uncut Gems and Good Time, and it has Emma Stone.
Uncut Gems.
And he's in Uncut Gems.
Uncut Gems.
Right. And it has Emma Stone in it too. So I don't know what the status of that one is. I think that was announced before The Rehearsal, but then The Rehearsal ended up coming out first.
I love everything Nathan Fielder so far.
Yeah.
Please don't have any sexual allegations.
Well, I think people are trying to cancel him on Twitter, like right now, about how he like manipulates people too much. Which we had that conversation just coincidentally in our last part, which we recorded yesterday, about like whether does he cross the line or whatnot. It's all in service of.
Which I think for the most part we gathered that like he doesn't. He does in some parts, but like it's worth it for the content, I guess. I don't know. I mean, that should be said lightly. Yeah,
me and Greg disagreed a little bit, actually, over whether he even does cross line. For me, it was only like one instance of line crossing, and I think the rest is totally fair game and just, straight up funny content. But anyway, you can go back to part 1 to check out that debate. We won't rehash that here. Let's talk about the overall show of The Rehearsal so far, and then we'll zero in on each of the 2 episodes as like a review of each. But like, so overall show... How would you describe the
Can we talk about the fucking trailer? The trailer's great.
I didn't watch the trailer. I wanted to go in.
You didn't?
Yeah, I wanted to go. I had like the intense desire to, you know what I mean? But I wanted to go
know about it until I saw the trailer.
Yeah,
dude, I freaked out. I was just on YouTube and I saw the trailer and I was like, "Oh, you're fucking kidding me." I was like, "No way, he has a new show." Cuz I honestly thought Nathan For You was kind of going to be it. Just because the very nature of like the show itself and who his character was and the fact that he plays his character in real life as well, I just didn't think that he would do another thing because they tied up that show really nicely with that movie. And so, I don't know, I just didn't think there was going to be a new thing. So I'm so excited that there's a new show, and it's so good. I watched the trailer, and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. I can't wait to watch this. It seemed very similar to Nathan For You, but like, different enough, which it is actually a very different concept.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It is very similar and also very different. Like, I was surprised how similar it felt to Nathan For You because I had thought he was going to like leave that style in the past because there were interviews where he said that the reason why Nathan For You ended wasn't because they got canceled or whatever. It was because he felt like they had pushed that format as far as it could possibly go. And they absolutely did,
That's admirable, too.
They had kind of already moved beyond the show's concept of, like, helping struggling small businesses. Like, how many episodes in that last season were actually about helping small businesses and weren't about some other crazy scheme, And the whole wrap-up movie has nothing to do with helping a small business. It's just following these, it has the Bill Gates guy come back who is not a small business, that guy's not a small business. He's just a dude. He's an old guy. He started hanging out at their office. So they had absolutely pushed the format as far as they could, when he said that, I had feared that like that meant he was going to leave behind the like unscripted reality style. But no, all it meant is he was going to find a new angle on that like medium to then push this current format even further.
So that's funny that you say you haven't seen the trailer, because the trailer...
Yeah, I wanted to go in completely knowing nothing. I actually, I knew that the rehearsal was coming out because I follow those like million different Nathan Fielder Twitter accounts. And they kept tweeting like, 6 days until the rehearsal, 5 days until the rehearsal, 4 days until, but I didn't know what it was, right? I was avoiding looking at any like screenshots or anything.
So what's crazy after, as you said, like you didn't see the trailer, have you seen it now? Because
no.
It gives away, it's basically the intro of the first episode. So that's what got me hooked.
Yeah.
So I didn't go into it blind. So when Sam watched it, we talked about it, the last video we did on Nathan For You. When Sam watched the first episode, it was totally blind, and he was like, "Oh, what is this?"
It was
he
like
had no idea what was going on
when he revealed
and he thought it was all unscripted.
Yeah. So the trailer revealed that everything he's saying. So that makes sense of the trailer, because that is the big like hook to the show. That will suck you in, and it sucked me in watching it. But I guess I'm glad that I got the experience of like actual the mind fuck of whoa, holy shit, he's actually...
Right, because you were just watching it because you just love Nathan Fielder. So you were like, exactly. I'm watching anything he's going to make, right? I wish I did that. God
if
damn.
I'm already sold on something, I won't watch the trailer and I won't like look into it anymore, and I'll try to go in blind. And I'm sold on anything Nathan Fielder does. So, and I love that this show feels like a natural evolution of Nathan For You. It's like it takes the things that work.
It's
so
like
well
they ramped it up.
They ramped it up, and also it's like he now has a premise that I think allows a lot more wiggle room than the initial "I'm gonna help struggling small businesses" premise. The rehearsal is broader, which means it has the legs to go in so many more directions. Like even just in these first 2 episodes, the variety is crazy. Episode 1 versus episode 2 are like completely different. And then episode 2 has like a cliffhanger ending, which we'll talk about when we dig into that specifically.
But both stories are rehearsals for these people, essentially, which is interesting. I'm curious to see how far they can go with this new concept, because I don't know. I don't see it having legs, honestly, which is...
Really?
I don't know.
I think it has crazy...
Yeah, I think
it has
the helping small businesses thing, to me, I think you could do a lot more with that than you could with, like, doing a rehearsal for things. But then again, it's not my idea, so they have all the ideas.
Yeah, I would say it's the opposite, because I think the word rehearsal is, like, just malleable enough that it can be applied to so many different situations. Whereas with small businesses, the situation is always a struggling small business, but the business itself can change. This one,
which
you
I guess
have
that
the
could
people
get dull.
changing, and you have... Yeah, because the thing with the Nathan For You format is there is a lot of repetition to it. They do a fantastic job of mixing it up, and like obviously once he... And like after season 1, it starts being like the business is kind of irrelevant. Like he can start hosting a dating game show. He can set up a tightrope walk. Like those things really aren't even at all related to struggling small businesses. So he was already like kind of throwing the format away to explore crazier things. With this
if you think about it, the tightrope one was kind of like the rehearsal.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Kind of more along the same lines, where like he's just helping somebody rather than helping
and he's
a small
like
business.
Rehearsing the actual tightrope walk itself for like months at a time, which is in line with the crazy prep work. The Finding Francis movie, when Bill Heath is rehearsing meeting Francis and he hires an actor to play Francis, that's like a direct prelude to the rehearsal as well. So you can
that's
see
honestly a direct prelude. Like if you remember in Finding Francis, he walks in the door, she walks in the door, or whatever. It's almost a direct prelude to the first episode of the rehearsal.
Yeah, to the way that it's cut
where
together,
he walks
and they'll like swap out the real people with the actors, which is a brilliant moment. Yeah. So the movie serves as like this beautiful little bridge between the 2 shows, where it's like the exact crystallized concept of the rehearsal is in the Nathan For You movie. So it works as like a segue almost, you know.
One that we never even saw coming. I wonder if they knew they were going to do this like a while ago. I wonder if they were like, oh hey, we're kind of onto something. Like they're realizing that they could do more with the show than what they were doing, and maybe Comedy Central didn't have quite as much a budget as HBO does.
Yeah, that's a point I want to hit on, is the budget. Nathan For You already felt like I wouldn't say it ever really felt like it was constrained by the budget, would you? The Nathan For You show. He was always doing like crazy, insane shit.
Near the end, he was the idea. Once we started seeing how crazy the ideas could get, that's when I was like, oh, okay, yeah, their budget's probably pretty constrained on what they can do, but the potential of what they can do.
I was thinking like they're probably maxing out their budget, like they're probably getting the most they could,
right?
And maybe they
this
could
is
do
supposed to be like a little,
shit
a small
budget.
Comedy Central man on the street
like I don't
type
think
show.
Comedy Central puts anywhere near as much money into their shows as an HBO Max show. I think that's pretty clear.
Right.
But the fact that he is able to make a whole dumb Starbucks thing on the Comedy Central budget, that's pretty insane. I don't know if they're like pulling in extra money from other
if he
sources
did it with
or whatever.
HBO, I bet you he would have been able to keep the store running, and
He would have
Red had like a
franchised.
clean store.
You know?
He would have had a clean store. He would have gotten like all the check marks from the inspection and the health inspector.
Yeah.
Because
Get a
that's the
liquor
reason
license.
he had to close it down, because they yeah, he would have had a liquor license.
Yeah. So one of the most exciting things about the rehearsal is that he's doing these crazy ideas again, but now he has like these seemingly unlimited resources of an HBO budget.
Yeah, he's probably not even close to maxing out the budget.
Yeah, the pure spectacle of like just the bar set of how in detail they recreate. Well, and that's not even talking about the guy's apartment. I guess let's dig into episode 1 now. Let's focus in on episode 1 now. The pure spectacle that he's able to build this bar to such exacting detail with like the exact hot sauce brand and the balloon up on the vent and shit. The exact like stocking the fridge with the right alcohol and everything is incredible.
So if we're talking like specifically budget, you could say that like all the construction of the bar and all that stuff and all like the specific hot sauces and all that is like incredible on its own. But I would even go a step further or think about something else, is that like all the research that it takes. All the research that it took to even do his apartment, redo his apartment.
Exactly.
All
Yeah,
the
they had to
strategies
send in
they had
the,
of like breaking in and doing the.
They were there doing some kind of inspection, and then they like 3D scan the room. It's
3D
brilliant.
scan the room.
I loved that one moment where the chair was different, where he says, "Due to a slight difference in chair, I ended up looking like a fool." And it's true. It's so true, and it's crazy how like the fact that he's so exacting and getting every detail right. And the fact that
like
this one detail
psychopath.
being different, but the fact that the one detail that was different, that chair having like the low seat, it really did make such a big
that
difference.
You can't fucking plan that kind of shit out. It kind of shows a flaw in like Nathan as a character of like, you can't, no matter how much you try in real life, it's very difficult to rehearse everything and get it exactly the way you want it to get, which is kind of what I picked up on with this show. Is like you're kind of seeing that character of him as like he is a very like collected and well organized person. He plans everything out exactly how it needs to happen, and it's like, oh shit, this one chair thing really just shows the flaw in his human nature, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating on that front, and it's also fascinating on in the way that it shows the virtue of wanting to rehearse, because a detail so small really did change everything about his delivery in that moment. It shows that like there is a point to going as extreme with the details as he's doing by virtue of showing what happens when they don't nail every detail. So it's kind of like a confirmation bias for this obsessive level of detail. We're all just little insects caught in Nathan Fielder's big spider web, We're little puppets that he's pulling the strings of, Yeah, he's a big spider puppeteer. Just the pure spectacle of constructing this whole bar, and then later we find out he shipped it across the country in the second episode is so crazy. And I gotta wonder what the HBO executives think of this. Like, do they see this on the budget
like,
as a
you
line
want us
item?
to send it as just so you can go in the bar and pretend to have a drink and have the person come in and meet you in the bar? Like, for this teeny tiny comedic moment, you want us to ship an entire fucking set across the country?
Well, and shipping it means like deconstructing it and then reconstructing it,
Yeah.
And the fact that it didn't even fit inside the warehouse, they like cut the little piece out of it. It's incredible.
Can you imagine being the workers that are deconstructing and reconstructing, just thinking like, why the fuck are we even doing this right now?
Well, so I kind of feel like for those guys, like, I mean, we've been on lots of film sets. We know those kind of people, they'll just be like, oh, yeah, that's what they want us to do, so we're going to do it. And I don't think they, like, care. Like, they're just like, we're getting paid, we're going to do the work, right? For me, it's the HBO executives in his suit, in his big $1 billion office, being, this line item right here, why are we going to spend $3 million to transport a set that we built in New York over to Oregon? You know? For me, it's that guy trying to compute that. And I wonder if there's like fights behind the scenes, like over the creative freedom, or if they trust Nathan Fielder enough to just like give him carte blanche to do whatever he wants with. But, you know, I also wouldn't be surprised if he would like disguise that from the HBO people. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he would be beyond calling it something else or like tricking them into, you know what I mean?
Right, like a little con artist. Yeah,
like the way he gets signatures.
Because he could have said
people.
like, oh, well, we're going to use it because we need a place for us to meet or something like that, so I can show her this is the kind of thing that I have done for other people, and we can't, you know, and then just not doing that.
Yeah, he's proven that he can like convince people of anything, you know, like he has that planned out. Like maybe he made one of those flow charts for what he would say to the HBO executive with like, if he says yes to this, then I go this way, you know, maybe
I would love to see like a behind the scenes of this show if he left HBO and went to Netflix or something like that. I'd love to see like a behind the scenes of like trying to create that show and of him like all the ways that like he was able to achieve the stuff in the edit. Like maybe a situation where it was like they had to film a whole day in that one the bar that they moved across the country, but they just didn't put it in the edit.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's totally possible. I'm sure they do film a lot of stuff that doesn't get into the edit, you know? This is the kind of show where they have such an abundance of footage because they must just have hundreds, if not thousands, probably thousands of hours of footage to comb through to find what they're looking for. Especially because, like, as this episode goes along, there's the point where, like, they've rehearsed it so many times and we're only seeing, like, a few seconds of each rehearsal, or not even each rehearsal of the like trivia night. They say that they ran through a full trivia night with like the full trivia game and the full like ordering the pizza and the drinks and like the entire night. They said they ran through that 6 times the entire night or more. Maybe it was a dozen times, which is crazy. And just imagine all the footage, because even before they get into the rehearsal, he's been meeting with him like several times to go on walks and stuff, you know. But I know they're for sure paying like all the actors who are filling out the bar, all the extras, you know, and the bartender and stuff. I imagine how many people are on payroll for these long ass days of going through the, like, that's just, the budget is astronomical. It's crazy to even imagine.
Can you imagine being one of these actors and working on one of these things?
Yeah.
I think it'd be so fun too. Just like pretending to be a bartender, like for not even like anything at all.
She was so funny, that moment where like she's like, I don't know how to make a fucking margarita.
She goes, I don't know how to make a margarita.
She's like, yeah, I just
salt around a thing.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was actually really impressed though by the actor who played Skeete's friend that he wanted to confess to. Remember how first off, I love that she met with him pretending to be a bird watcher. That was so funny. And then like just she observed that woman's like mannerisms so well. I was really impressed by her performance.
Actress.
Yeah, when she was pretending to be that friend in the bar, I was like, yeah, this is a really good performance. Like, it doesn't feel like a cheap impression. It feels like she is like embodying what she saw of that woman, what we saw of that woman.
Yeah, I was genuinely impressed with that actress.
I hope she ends up getting some like nice acting gigs out of using this in her resume or whatever, you know, out of putting it in her reel. Yeah, I was impressed.
The first thing we see is them in the apartment itself, which is genius. Just that he picked the exact book and like just these little
the comment
things
about the doors, which seems so like innocuous, you know.
Which is something you'd see from Nathan For You. Like, that's definitely some more stuff that you'd see. Like, that's smaller stuff that you'd see in Nathan For You. But
well, that kind of comment, yeah, but not the fact that he rehearsed it dozens of times and planned out saying something so mundane, you know? The plunger joke and the way that deviates is hilarious.
Yeah.
I should start traveling with one of these.
Yeah, with one of these and it didn't land.
Yeah, it doesn't land. He's like, oh, well, okay then. You know, he thought I was insulting his understocked.
He goes, I didn't plan that I was insulting him not having a plunger. It truly feels like we are taking this character from Nathan For You and developing it into a whole, not a new character, but like the next level of that character. Like, it's like this character decided to create a new show on their own. Like, he's still that person who wants to connect with people, but it's not as obvious in this one.
Yeah, he's
than
now.
It is in the
well,
others.
I think it is. I think
far.
it's. Well, yeah, I think it's in the background, and I think.
Yeah, episode 2 is getting kind of close to that, though, with him taking care of the kid.
Well, I think that moment you mentioned of in episode 2, we see that brief glimpse of him in the bar again. I think that's getting to it. I think, and I mean, obviously, he then talks about their woman that ends up meeting him there. But even just seeing him in that bar, I think it's starting to probe deeper into his psychology as a character, and it's all intentional. I'm sure he's aware of it. When we were talking about it being a weird line item of like, you transported all the way here for this one quick moment,
right.
But I think it is worth it in a way. How like thought provoking of an idea it is that he transported this is like the fact that it's so strange and seems like such a waste of money is so noteworthy that it somehow justifies spending that much money on it because it's that unusual.
Like, what is going on psychologically if you do bring the bar? The fact that like I can see him being like, well, no, like it's kind of like because my character is this lonely. It's just too much that you have to explain for a pitch. It's
like, what does it say about a person who would do this? One of the things I like about this show, and that I think is another like evolution of Nathan For You, is it's not afraid to get dramatic and like purely intriguing in a way where it sets the comedy aside for a moment, and which is something that Nathan For You didn't really do except for the Finding Frances movie. The Finding Frances movie serves as that segue, not just in terms of the like concept like we already touched on, but also in terms of like the tone, the fact that it's willing to get a little more dramatic and a little more serious, and it's okay not being funny for a few minutes as long as it's being like intellectually engaging and emotionally engaging.
In Nathan For You, when we did see those emotional moments where we meet with Nathan's true character of being lonely and needing someone, right? It usually was comedic.
Yeah, it's always
It was usually
funny.
like the audience is laughing at him being vulnerable, as opposed to in the movie, it's totally not that.
It's always like him asking to hang out with somebody.
I remember when you and I were watching it, I remember saying like out loud, being like, oh, fuck. Like, he's having me feel for him right now.
Yeah.
This is very bizarre to me. Like, I was like feeling sad, like genuinely, because I couldn't pick between whether or not he was serious or not. Like, whether or not this was actually him. It was just genius.
Yeah.
Like, fuck you, Nathan.
Well, and I love that the rehearsal is like embracing that more. It took that aspect of the movie, which worked so well, and it's now embracing it. Oh, I also wanted to briefly say I loved how long the first episode was. It was like 45 minutes or something. It wasn't like, which is a big step up from Nathan For You, where because on Nathan For You, obviously it's the commercials and stuff, so it was a half-hour show, but it's really closer to like 22 or 24 minutes once you take.
It didn't even feel like 40 minutes for me. It felt like
it went by
kind
so
of the
quick,
same amount of time as Nathan For You, but it actually.
It was so it went by so quick, but I will say, I didn't feel the runtime that it felt long, but I did feel the runtime and that it felt more substantial. Like it was able to let things linger, which is the good side of something being longer, as opposed to it feeling like draining or like outstaying its welcome. It doesn't have the downsides of it; it just has the positive.
A channel like Comedy Central, you have to have these clear commercial breaks. And Nathan For You really did. It was obvious when you would cut to commercial or something.
Yeah.
Because they do like something dramatic that would tease up to it or whatever. This new show, The Rehearsal, is like more professional, more cinematic, more.
It's closer to like a narrative documentary versus the reality documentary hybrid of Nathan For You.
This show could get very deep. Like,
oh yeah, I think it is
the way
already,
that it's going so far.
Get deeper.
It could get really deep. Yeah,
I actually think it is already getting
it started
deep,
lighthearted,
deeper than it might seem. Well, so it is lighthearted, but I think there are a few moments of profundity. Like it calls to mind a lot of like really great pieces of art in like filmmaking. Like I was reminded of Fitzcarraldo, the great Werner Herzog movie about the guy carrying bringing the boat over the top of a mountain, when he transports the bar across country, for how like obscene of a task it is and the fact that Werner Herzog in real life did that. Well, Nathan Fielder in real life is doing it because obviously his isn't a narrative. And I'm reminded of Synecdoche, New York, the great Charlie Kaufman movie, in that it's like the theater space inside of a warehouse, but it's like creating a world inside of a world that he can live in, that he's constructed, but he's trying to immerse himself in outside of the actual reality. There's a lot of like really deeply, thoroughly thought-provoking things at play while still being just hilarious, It's what's
putting
so great
someone in a very meta, artificial scenario and environment, yet still having them feel very real feelings and be able
using
to
that
peel back that
artificiality to
artifice.
bring out a greater sense of authenticity than you can often get in like scripted
That's a great
drama.
way to put it. I would really love to rehash this. First off, even the idea that he was like, oh, the issue is that if he spends too much time on the game in his brain, he's not going to make that choice. So I have to feed him the answers without him knowing it. Yeah,
right. So we talked about this in
that
our
is
first
just
part,
great.
That montage of them walking around and getting the answers in is so fucking funny. That might be the funniest part of episode 1 to me.
Oh, it's so good. I just did not see that kind of thing coming. It's such a beautiful moment of comedy. Like, I laughed the entire time.
Yeah, everyone was hilarious. Yeah.
If you were to live your life and like walk, in New York City, like say you were to do that, right? And you were to experience people around you, right? You wouldn't know whether those people are acting or if they are serious. So even if there was a bad actor, if you were interacting with a person who's a bad actor, you wouldn't expect. You wouldn't know.
Yeah.
You just think they're weird. So he was probably like, oh, this person's weird, the way they talk. Like, this isn't really what a crime scene looks like, but why would he question it? Like, why would he question it? Who questions if it's a crime scene or not?
Yeah, well, and it's the thing of like how it's easier to like lie to someone if they don't have any reason to suspect that you're lying,
Yes.
But, like if you're lying and you're being interrogated, then it's going to be like easy for your lies to get caught. Whereas if you're just having a conversation and you lie about something like completely innocuous, there's no reason to suspect that you'd be lying, so people will just like go along with it. Nathan fully capitalizes on that aspect of the human
very
thought
manipulating
process. Because think about it from that guy's perspective. It's not like they just went to this one spot. They were on this long ass walk where they probably walked several blocks or whatever, and then they happened to pass by this person who was already there. It's not like they met them there. He has no reason to suspect that person is anything other than having that they're overhearing a conversation.
Right, because he didn't create scenarios that were really over the top. He created pretty generic scenarios. Like one was a construction worker,
and he wasn't like, oh, we're going to go meet my construction worker friend who's working on this building. Like, that's not how Nathan pitches it to him. He pitches it, we're just going to walk past this guy.
And they're talking about bullshit as they go.
Yeah, they're talking about
the Burj
Khalifa.
What's this guy?
Oh, the code on the door is one of my other favorite ones. The year of the French Revolution, though. That's so funny. Of the storage unit or whatever, yeah. Another moment that we talked about in our part 1 that is worth revisiting is that moment where Cora Skeete is trying to build up the nerve to actually make this confession that the whole thing is about. And it's the one detail that is wrong is his pizza isn't there, right?
Yeah.
That the pizza's taking too long.
And he's kind of like a robot. Because he's forced to be, because they've rehearsed it so many times. So for someone that's rehearsed something so many times for something to go wrong, he was probably like, oh shit.
It's like when you do so meticulously account for every variable and there's an extra variable, it makes that variable, it makes a mountain out of a molehill. It turns that variable into something crazy and like insurmountable. And he like locked up, he froze. And then he's like going back and forth of like.
Right, because he probably as a person took this entire rehearsal as like this is the only reason that I'm actually going to go and express this to my friend. And so if it doesn't go right, he's not going to do it. And so he's sitting there like waiting for the pizza, like this is the thing that needs to happen so that I can then do this, which as a normal person, you would just be like, oh, the pizza's not ready. I'll just do it anyways. I really want to talk about how you think she feels watching this episode. Or even how you think he feels watching this episode. Like that girl that he told her like a very... Like, do you think they're still friends after this? Like, how... If that was your friend, like, how bizarre would that be to watch them go through a rehearsal, someone mimic you, create like a fake scenario, a bird watcher to
yeah, oh,
holy
it's crazy.
shit.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy mindfuckery right there.
Well, then think about this, right? The extra layer of this particular episode that the second one doesn't have, and maybe others will at some point, right? But his whole thing is that he wants to confess this lie that he told her he had a master's degree when he doesn't, which is like a pretty small lie. In confessing that lie, he has now created a much bigger lie for himself without realizing it. Because now he's hiding this whole rehearsal process from her. That is an infinitely larger deception than what he's actually confessing.
Right, because now you're deceiving your really good friend who really doesn't care about the lie.
You're putting her on like hidden cameras and stuff, and you're putting her into these situations that are infinitely more questionable and you know.
I mean, they must have had to, they probably came to her after once it was all edited and said like, hey, showed her it and been like, can we put you on or something like that.
Well, maybe.
Like they had to get her release.
The thing is there are circumstances where you don't need to get a release from somebody, and I'm sure Nathan, for you used it a lot. So like there are different state laws, right? Like some states are a 2-party consent law for recording, others are a 1-party consent, meaning like you don't need a person's permission to film them. There are also, it varies state to state. So like that episode was in New York. I don't know what the specifics are. It might be a case of you can just film anybody and put them in the thing. It varies state to state, but I know that at least some states you do need everyone to sign a release for anything, no matter what. Other ones, you just need to notify them that they're on camera, and that can just mean like having a sign on the wall that says recording in progress or whatever. Other places, you don't need any permission at all, and you can record someone as long as you present them as they are, and you don't like manipulate the footage to like dub their voice saying something different or like deep fake them or whatever.
I hope their friendship is okay, because if I was her, I would be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
First off, my friend, I guess, responds to Craigslist ads like this. And second off, I guess my friend thinks that this teeny tiny thing to me was this huge deal to them.
Right. But then this huge deal wasn't anything to him.
Yeah, the bigger deal of lying to her doesn't matter as much as the teeny tiny little lie. And that's once again the morality thing. It's like, damn. When I was watching this episode, I was just like, I feel for her. Like, I don't want to, if I were her, I wouldn't want to watch this. Like, this is TV, so she can see this. Like, once this comes out, like, it's like a gotcha, you know? And it's like, yikes. And this girl means so much to him. Like, we watch how much she means to him, and what if this ruined their relationship?
I mean, it's interesting. The show concludes by saying that his admission like strengthened their friendship, but that's without her knowing about this whole production necessarily.
Right.
So maybe that reveal would end up changing that, because it concludes on the positive note of like, oh, it was a good thing, right? But maybe not once she knows about the actual show. I think that's just like an inherent cost of creating art in this way, like creating these kinds of both funny but also genuinely thought-provoking. I think there's going to be some collateral damage in what he's doing, and I think that's
right. Like it's just the nature of the format. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think that the show and Nathan Fielder have kind of an out. I think it's more on this core Skeete guy than it is on Nathan. Actually, the fact of lying to the friend.
Agree.
Like
I agree.
Obviously, Fielder's creating the situation, but he's the one going along in like, okaying, you can get secret footage of this friend of mine, and I'm not going to tell her about the cameras and stuff. So he's at least complicit, if not more so than the production, because he's the one with the personal link to her.
Right. It's bizarre to me still that he feels nothing in regards, or very little in regards to lying to her this much, but feels a lot about telling her this teeny tiny truth.
I think it probably just like genuinely didn't occur to him, which is interesting.
It's interesting on who he is as a person. No offense if you're watching, but like It is interesting psychologically on like who he is as a person, and that's kind of how these types of shows are too. Like Nathan For You and The Rehearsal, it's like you got to wonder who would accept these types of things. You know?
Yeah, and this episode probed so deeply into his psychology. Like
the second episode is like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
who would
we'll definitely get
that?
into that. Yeah,
yeah.
But this first one, I loved all the little insights we get into this guy's psychology because it starts feeling like a character study in addition to being funny. And it's not always like we're seeing funny insights into who this guy is. It's also just like, oh, that's interesting.
It might be less so about the theme of helping people and more so of an inner look on people. Real people.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And an inside look on who people are. Because that's kind of what we're getting here, is like a psychological analysis of these people.
Yeah,
absolutely. You go back to Nathan For You and the tight walk guy, it's a very psychological analysis of a person who would lie this much to this girl.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he would pretend to his whole family and everyone that he was a stunt guy.
Yeah, and he would take the credit for it and like fully embrace that. It's fascinating. I think that is where a lot of the brilliance of Nathan Fielder's work comes from, is these like insights into human nature. And another moment that I love is when their table is taken, the table that they rehearsed at. It's another thing like with the pizza of like,
that was bizarre to me. I was like, why would you move the table? That was so cringy for me because I would never ask. Especially the way he did it, I would never ask someone. The way he said of like his mother had, that was insane. It's like some sociopathic shit right there. And just to be okay with even saying that, you know, to be like apathetic to telling random people that that his mother died of cancer.
And then the guy who he has to move, he actually went through the thing that the main guy's lying about.
Yeah.
And he goes, and he still is like, yeah, okay, I'm still going to take your table. That's crazy. I wanted to talk about Nathan's own confession at the end of this first episode. The thing that he lied to Skeete about was feeding him the trivia questions. And he knows that Core never would have gone along with that. So at the end of the episode, I love how they edited that and shot it.
He was talking to the actor instead.
Yeah, but you don't know that until the end. It looks like he's giving his confession, and then they cut to the actor. It's just such a great hard cut to the actor.
I didn't even realize that they were doing it. Like, I was like, wait, are they? Wait, I'm pretty sure I saw him confess, but I went back and saw the way they cut it was so perfect that it makes you think that he started confessing, but he didn't actually. Well, and then he says like some bullshit.
He gives it out. He did kind of start to, and then he gives the out because he backs out.
Right.
Which is hilarious, but it's also dramatic, you know?
Yeah.
It's engaging on a thematic,
what a great idea
level.
To show that like Nathan is willing to expose these people and have them say these truths that they are having a hard time with, but he as a character can't do it himself. He's done everything, all of the rehearsal in regards to doing it, but can't
But he
himself
still won't go through with it, yeah.
Go through with it. He's weaker than the people that are going on his show.
Yeah, that's another one of those areas where it probes really deep into the Nathan Fielder screen persona.
And it's also really fucking funny.
Oh,
I don't know how you can
funny.
have something so serious be so funny
both
at the same time.
Both simultaneously at the exact same moment.
It's so
hilarious.
Great. But yeah, that first episode's so great. It's fucking gold. I thought it was one of the best pilot episodes of a show. I don't even think it could be considered as a pilot episode of a show because they did have Nathan For You, and so you already start loving. I already love the character.
Right, it had a predecessor.
It's almost like it's a sequel, but it's not.
I'm wondering how well this show works for people who haven't ever seen Nathan For You, and I think there are a lot of people who are going to watch this who never saw Nathan For You because this is
because it's on HBO.
More accessible. Yeah, because it's on HBO. So I got someone to watch the first episode of The Rehearsal the other day who had never seen Nathan For You, and they were just confused by his screen persona. They just thought he was like awful to watch, like a
uncomfortable,
vacuum of
cringy.
Charisma. Yeah,
yeah.
They didn't get that he was like doing a comedic persona kind of thing. So they fully believe that's who this guy was, which is interesting. And I'd be curious to see their
because in the beginning of Nathan For You, he's not that strong of that persona.
Yeah, it kind of developed over time.
It's more about the comedy, and you watch him turn into that person, which is weird because it's not you're not watching the character turn into that person. You're watching Nathan figure it out. That's
You're watching
what he
him
wants
turn into the character.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're watching the character become fully rounded over a development cycle.
I think it takes a certain kind of person for me to show Nathan For You and the rehearsal. Like, I don't think I haven't recommended it to anyone yet. I
recommend it to
everyone,
literally every person.
I've talked to people and I've said, like, since it came out, I'm like, oh my God, have you seen the rehearsal? And they'd be like, nah. And I'd be like, oh, it's so good. But that's all I'll say. I won't say, like, you gotta watch it. Because I just, like...
I do.
Whatever, man.
I know it won't be for everybody.
It takes a certain personality, it seems, which is stinky because it's so good.
No, that's definitely true. It's definitely not for everybody. There's a lot of people it's not going to connect with. I think...
Which I would prefer.
Yeah, the reason why I just recommend it to everybody regardless is because I just figure I'll take the scattershot approach, and as long as there's a couple new Nathan Fielder fans, it's worth it. Do you think we're ready to move on to episode 2? Or do you have more to say about episode 1? Okay,
yeah,
we can double
back
if there's anything else. So episode 2... one thing that threw me off the bat that I was actually a little disappointed by with the second episode was that it was a much shorter runtime. It went back to closer to a Nathan For You episode's length. I think it was like 26 minutes or something like that.
Oh, really?
It was shorter again.
It could just be because it's going to be part 1, part 2.
Well, exactly. That's what I found out by the end of the episode, that it was a cliffhanger, which I wasn't expecting. I didn't know that they would be doing, multi-part episodes. It's so different from the first episode already, and I love the variety that we're seeing. It feels like a completely different show, yet it is in line tonally, and it's in line thematically, and it's in line in the fact that it really feels like we're learning about Nathan Fielder, the person, just by watching how he interacts with other people, how, like, guarded he is.
Throughout the episode, we slowly transition into, like, a very different dynamic, if you ask me. Like, we kind of run away from the idea that it's like not a game show, but like it's a reality TV show, like it's a shtick, right? And we more run into the idea of we're watching a narrative.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And I think that's
like a journey
super
doc.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like a journey doc, especially the way that it unfolds and the way that he gets involved in it at the end, which I guess let's talk about that. We're kind of talking about it in like reverse order, but I think that it warrants discussion. Like, and they show him calling a producer or whoever, I think one of the HBO people, saying, I'm now getting involved in this experiment. And then he calls up all the parents of all the kids and stuff, which is really interesting. And you see him using the flow chart, which I love. That's just a funny moment, and it's also really insightful to the fact that, like, it worked. Like, it did help him navigate
is too.
That, but it also, like, that is a tough conversation to have, and the flow chart did help him navigate that easily.
Right.
And
Can you imagine being one of those parents watching this show being like, what the fuck? That was fake? That was
and
like
it's also impressive in that, like, before they show the flowchart, it does feel like a genuine phone call. Like, you don't know that he's reading off of that right away until they show him following it with the pen and all that. Like, his delivery makes it sound spontaneous enough. I do think, though, let me know if you disagree, I do think, though, that him getting involved might have been planned from the beginning.
I think so, too.
But at the same time, now that I say it out loud,
planned,
I'm wondering what they would have done if the thing with Robin had worked out. That one guy.
They probably just would have rolled with it.
Probably would have rolled with it, yeah. So I guess it's more like a contingency plan versus like a plan A. Like plan B is him getting involved.
Because him getting involved doesn't cost a huge budget that they would have had to plan ahead. It just is he's replacing the person. If something like that happened in the first episode, that's very different. Because they have so many things that they planned out meticulously and built and huge budget items that, like, if that just was improvised, that wouldn't go well. You know what I mean? But this is a situation where it's like all you're doing is replacing Nathan with him with Nathan, and it's like, okay.
What does make such a big difference, though, because now the guy who's running the show is in the show. I mean, he's always in the show, but by running the show, I mean, I'm saying the show is everything that happens within that big house that they've rented for her.
Yeah.
That's the show.
It makes you wonder with the cliffhanger of, like, I wonder how it's going to work moving forward. Is he going to have a new person producing and telling him what to do or something? Like,
there's got to be someone in the control room monitoring the cameras like he was doing and all that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I want to clarify for people watching. At the time of recording, I already kind of mentioned it, but at the time of recording, only the first 2 episodes have released. The next episode, meaning the second part of this cliffhanger episode, will be airing tomorrow at the time that we're recording this. I'm saying that again here because by the time this video is up on YouTube, the cliffhanger will have already aired and will have already been resolved.
Right.
This video will probably be up, a while from now. Okay, let's talk about the cold open of the episode, because I loved how they cut that together. It looks like he's running an operation to steal a baby and replace a baby.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
And the thing is like in the context of the show, right? Like they revisit that moment later on, and in the context,
there's nothing for you to think any other differently.
Yeah, and the thing is, he is crazy enough to do it. It's like, would he do this? And the answer is maybe. He might.
Yeah.
That's how crazy it is. That's what makes it such a gripping intro. I was edge of my seat. Is he really stealing a baby right now?
Is the woman in on this? Is the woman does she know that they're stealing it, or are they doing it behind her back to show her what they can provide or something like that? I thought maybe it was going to be that they replaced the baby and be and then he walked in to go talk to her and be like, hey, so by the way,
that's not your baby.
Yeah, that's not your baby. So this is the kind of thing that we can provide. I'm that is so morally terrible that they please do not be the truth.
Yeah.
But at this point, anything goes.
I love that it's it is a possibility that's what's really happening. The fact that he has created such madness throughout Nathan Fielder and even the first episode of this, that it's within the realm of possibility that he's literally stealing.
Can you
imagine
someone's watching that as the first episode you've ever watched of Nathan anything? Just watching
the very first thing you see. It's so insane. Yeah. But then in the full context, you learn, okay, that isn't what's happening. And it's actually, it's still fascinating what they're doing of swapping out the babies when she isn't noticing. It kind of makes it look like, oh, she would be a terrible parent. She did seem more savvy than the average person. When she's talking to Robin, she mentions how they're doing an experiment or whatever, And she kind of acknowledges that it's a little crazy, which is something we haven't seen in Nathan Fielder. They mostly go along with it. And I think it's actually more interesting this way, because it shows that they're aware that this is unusual, and then how do they interact in this unusual
And so then it becomes okay, so what is she doing it for then?
It's is she getting the purported benefit of it?
It's almost like she didn't even care that Nathan was a part of it. Okay,
so let's go back to that. The moment where he proposes, how about I join this, I think is a moment like the pizza thing, where the guy's it happens in the bar again, coincidentally. Maybe that's why they did that. But it's the pizza moment where he's delaying the confession by taking this one little thing and fixating on it and being oh, it's not perfect, so I'm gonna check on the pizza and I'm gonna keep delaying it as a subconscious scapegoat to avoid coming on with it. I think you see that from her. She avoids answering right away by going she makes a big deal about the baby yawning or whatever. That's so clearly a defense mechanism, a way to delay answering as she thinks about it, because she doesn't want to be rude or whatever.
Well, she first started with saying, which I thought, I still don't know really what she was trying to say, but what I thought she was saying was basically going, hey, I know this is a show and I'm on camera right now, and so I don't want to be rude to you, but I would appreciate you communicating a big change like this to me before I get on camera. I think that that's what she was trying to say, but I actually don't know, because then she said some other things that kind of contradict that, and it turned out to it might have been the editing, but it kind of turned out to just seem like she was totally fine with it. But I really don't know, because she did do that deflection of going straight to the baby. It was very unnatural. Very unnatural.
I think you can read in how she tried to be very chipper, and I think her exact words were off the top of my head, I'd say, why not, or something like that, or let's go for it.
Yeah.
She's trying to be chipper about it and upbeat, but I think you can see that she has reservations about going forward with this. She has hesitancy about going forward with it. And I think it was really interesting to me that Nathan mentioned the power dynamic of, I'm the one running the show, so I don't want the power dynamic to influence this. And the thing is, he can say that, but it is still a factor for her. Absolutely. Regardless. It plays into obviously it's not a sexual misconduct thing, but it is in the line of the way a lot of those Me Too abuses are carried out through the power dynamic of the coercion element of it. And he's fully aware of that, I think. And you can make the case of like he is putting her into a situation that is probably going to make her uncomfortable, and even acknowledging it doesn't like wipe the slate clean of the power dynamic, but he's doing it intentionally, and I think he is providing a fascinating and like worthwhile exploration into that type of dynamic by like shining a light on how that dynamic unfolds in a situation that isn't as extreme as like a sexual abuse situation. It's almost like he's kind of doing a service and showing some people how this type of dynamic manifests. Because I think a lot of people hear about the power dynamic thing. A lot of like frat bro guys, like a lot of dudes who like don't, are like, what's the big deal? What are you talking about? I think seeing this might actually help some people realize, oh, that's why a power dynamic is something to take into account. And that's why...
That's interesting. Yeah, that's
why
totally
someone
true.
in a position of power shouldn't ask for this kind of thing. I think seeing it in action in a situation that's a little bit removed from the typical scenario might actually help some people realize why it's a problem, who maybe are in denial or who don't understand why it's a problem on a base level. And I'm wondering if that is why he brought that up and why he's putting this situation out there. Or at least like a facet of it, not the full reason, but a part of it.
Right.
I don't know.
If so, I mean, that's really awesome. The power that you have as a show to be able to push ideas like that is really awesome. And that's how a show can do a really good thing.
It's possible he's just throwing it out there as a way to try to like cover his own ass.
Right. Or just as a way to acknowledge that the audience probably recognizes that, and so he's recognizing that, even though it doesn't do shit for her.
Right.
He's at least
it's the performative thing of giving her an out. He does give her an out, which is good. Like, so that is better than if he didn't give her an out at all. It doesn't really alleviate the problem altogether.
It seems like, and this might be the same case for all the people that have dealt with Nathan Fielder, or like in the shows, right? Is they know it's a show, or they know it's a shtick, like it's him trying to help them, or it's a part of a bigger production, right? It's a production that's trying to help them, right? So she knows that. So usually the people who run those things are professional, it's supposed to be professional, supposed to be like well-spoken, and it's very business, and that's basically it, right? Like The Prophet, like I said the last episode. I wonder what it's like for someone in these circumstances to go from the mentality of, oh, this person's helping me, to realizing that, oh, the person that is helping me and is running this thing is a little uncomfortable and weird and awkward, but it's still the show. Like, I'm still going to be helped, but I definitely would prefer it not being this person. You know what I mean? Like, she's dealing with him at the beginning of this, like, I'm going to help you, and maybe he's a little off, but she doesn't really think it. But now she has to deal with him, like, really, like, personally. And she starts to realize, I think, like, oh, he's, like, why would he be asking to be a part of this? That's weird. Like, that's not what this is supposed to be,
like, what
right?
is his real motive here is probably one of the things she's thinking. Yeah, as she's playing with the baby, that's one of the things she's thinking is, what is his real motive? Possibly is he trying to get into my home to take advantage of me? Or, like, that's the thing she has to consider, for sure.
It's like her directly realizing, I would say, I mean, this is an assumption, her directly realizing that, okay, this moment shows me that he is a weird dude. Like, this identifies Nathan as, like, uncomfortable and everything that we know his character to be, but maybe the people hadn't known because of the artifice of it being a show and a production and blah, blah, blah. It's easy to you know?
I think he comes across more, like, professional in the rehearsal when he's dealing with people at first, because he's not pitching them a crazy business idea. He is still pitching them a crazy idea.
But he talks in a weird way still. He's definitely more of an uncomfortable type of person. So even though she might find him uncomfortable, it's not unnormal for her to just keep going along with it anyways. Because it's for the show. But I bet you she's feeling weird.
She's thinking, like, what am I getting myself into with this? What did I already get myself into? And what am I getting myself into further if I agree to
this moment is her realizing, what did I already get myself into? Like, maybe before this she felt okay, a little weird, but now it's like, oh shit, what is this?
Yeah, she's like, this is this? She's like, this is the point of no return if I go forward with this. I just broke my pen as I was gesturing.
Do we want to go back and talk about like maybe the beginning of the second episode?
Yeah, well, let's talk about the concept of the so the whole concept of the episode is fascinating. It's this idea of like a test trial without consequences for motherhood.
It's actually a really fascinating concept.
Yeah, it's worthy of like a feature-length documentary on its own. And then to see like how it's executed, where like they're abiding by like the child labor laws, like the set laws of a kid can't work for however many hours a day, and they can't.
Which is
work
cool because
past...
they're teaching people about set laws, which is fascinating.
Yeah, which is something a lot of people probably don't know. And there's like a baby can't work after this time
4
at night,
hours.
Stuff like but also
a certain time at night,
like the curfew too.
So they replace it with a robot baby. That to me was like, how is that gonna play out? And it's great.
Yeah, I mean it works great, but also
then it turns out he was falling asleep. He was supposed to be an all-nighter,
within 15 minutes or whatever. It's crazy, and it's like how, and they keep that guy on. They don't even like fire him. Nathan just starts babysitting him is the funny part. So it's kind of interesting that he starts like that he has to babysit the night watchman when the whole experiment is the night watchman is watching to make sure that the woman in the trial is babysitting her actual baby. Not babysitting, but like raising the baby, And the fact that like they replace the real baby with an animatronic baby at night calls into question, couldn't they do the whole trial with an animatronic baby?
Right.
Why does it need to be a real baby all the other hours?
Yes,
and there obviously is a difference. Like she is getting the experience of interacting with a real baby. But it's so crazy the fact that like I love that they show these babies are coming from somewhere. Like the babies have parents that are okay putting them in this. It makes you wonder about the parents. Like obviously they think their babies are safe and all that, but it is like they're leaving their babies with a strange woman who is, they don't know anything about her, and
they don't know if she's ever
like
even been okay with kids.
There's so much you have to do with like a newborn baby to make sure that. Like any little thing goes wrong and it could be disastrous. And they're
I can tell you right off the bat, I would not leave my baby with this woman.
No, I would absolutely not. I mean, especially when she starts talking about all the Jesus stuff, that alone, that's a big old red flag right there.
It was funny seeing the real mom's response to, can I put canola oil? What was it? Lavender oil on her feet.
Soles.
And she was like, okay.
I mean, there's a lot of trust involved from these parents to allow them. I do like that they showed that like they're getting the parents to sign off for any little changes. I loved the adoption scene that was so completely unnecessary. That had like nothing to do with the it has no bearing on the experiment. It's just hilarious.
Is this something that you give at these things? He gives her champagne, and she's holding the shot of her holding the champagne and the baby at the same time is like, I laughed so hard of her just like.
I thought it was even funnier when he's like, explain why you're an unfit mother and you're putting the baby up for adoption. That's so funny. Wouldn't it have been great if her answer to why are you an unfit mother was because I'm about to give my baby away to a weird
random
production?
Stranger?
To a random stranger. So it's a fascinating concept for an experiment. And it was interesting that like that's how Angela in the experiment described it by calling it an experiment. I think they called it like a groundbreaking experiment, and that's how Nathan Fielder kind of described it on the phone call too.
And she built it up a lot too when she was telling the guy, which is I thought
because she was trying to like entice him to like make it sound all, Which I mean it is a groundbreaking experiment really to have all these different kids, and the fact that like this first part only gets into when they're a baby, but the experiment they showed is planned out to go through like different ages, right? Right? Like and it's supposed to run for like weeks and weeks and swap out these kids at different points. So I don't even know if part 2 of this concept will be the last one. Maybe it'll keep going further.
That's what I was thinking. After this episode, I was like, wait, are we about to watch an entirely different show? Like, is this what the show is? Is just these two?
Like maybe for a couple episodes. It'd be weird to have one episode that's contained and then the rest of the series be all about this other thing. That'd be strange.
Right?
I guess it would.
It would be very strange.
It would still be entertaining and it would still be interesting, but it would be very strange structurally.
I also had a weird thought as if like, what if Nathan's character, because he's so committed to his character, what if what they do is like make his character go and live this life with the girl, and then somebody else produces the show, and we check in on them every once in a while. Like,
Oh, but like we're following a different host?
yes.
Oh, that would be incredible.
I
Who
was
would
like,
the
that would
host
be
be?
weird. I don't think you could top Nathan as a host, though. I don't think you could
but
even
that,
match
that would
it.
be fascinating though. If they, what if they bring in a fake Nathan, just someone who's doing a Nathan Fielder impression, like that they put in the bar trivia and stuff. That
would be kind of cool.
I actually wouldn't put it past them. You know, that'd be interesting.
Neither would I.
Oh, 'cause
well, it would
then
fit the character to be like,
Yeah.
I'm no
Oh,
longer.
it totally would.
I shouldn't be a part of the show if I'm going to
Right,
be doing
because
this.
I
and, like,
can't be
this is now my
impartial.
life's work.
Yeah,
Yes.
like I can't be impartial, and then it becomes a situation of like, since I was busy with the experiment, I need someone to host the show for me.
Right,
So he hires
right.
someone to be him, and then
Right.
I kind of hope
this is
they
his
do that
personal,
now.
like, thing.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping they do that now because it would be so fascinating. Because what they would be doing is the fake reality then becomes the real reality for the host, whereas the behind the scenes info is now what becomes fake. Oh, that'd
Yep.
be so fascinating. I'm kind of hoping that they do
And we
that now.
we check in on them every once in a while too throughout the show.
Yeah. I guess that's our prediction for this episode that will have aired by the time the video's out.
Nathan's created a type of show that, or at least like either a theory or a philosophical idea of like, you really don't need much to find a comedic thing about something. He just basically created this shell and just watched it, and just comedic shit is just showing up in front of him, as opposed to him creating comedic scenarios, which sometimes he does.
Well, he like with the adoption thing. That's a created comedic scenario. That little adoption role play. So that's a
Right.
comedic scenario.
But it's not the
a lot of
funniest
the
stuff
other
of the
stuff,
show.
Yeah, but a lot of the other stuff is not at all planned for comedy. It's planned for like logistically how you would run this experiment.
Right.
Right, like the guy falling asleep. That's not planned. Or I mean, I guess it could be. It could be. Maybe he played it like the old man swimming through. We can't know.
Yeah,
That's
you can't
like-
know any of it, honestly.
He has created like a sandbox where anything is possible.
Right, and so you create, and so many possibilities of comedy come out of that. But so many things of comedy and simultaneously drama come out of all of this. It's just great. It's such a beautiful show. Did I mention I like the show?
Let's get into the like father side of it. So she
Oh,
eventually
yeah.
says she wanted to do it with a father, and then this is almost like it's like tangential to the experiment. It's like not exactly part of the experiment, but it's
That was kind of the issue why she wasn't having kids in the first place.
Yeah.
She could have kids, but she was like, I just don't have a father. And he's like, oh, so do you have like a boyfriend? And she goes like, no, as in like, obviously. Because if she did have someone she cared about, she would probably just get pregnant and have a kid.
right. She wouldn't be doing the experimental side of it at all, possibly.
It seems like what she really needed help with was getting
Sort
a
of like
husband.
dating help, kind of. Yeah, more
Yeah.
so than the baby. It's kind of like that's
Right.
her ulterior motive. Because my first thought when they said specifically that she wanted to have the husband to like share the duty of raising the kid. Because remember how
Yeah.
she was talking about how she needed like a babysitter in advance and
Yeah.
stuff like that, which I think is her being a little unreasonable given what she signed up for in the experiment. But at any rate, my first thought when she was saying that like she needed to have someone come in to be the husband, I thought what they were going to do was just have an actor be the husband and play the role of her husband, do a fake husband thing. But instead they go and they get the actual husband, which I think is perhaps owing to the fact that that's what she really wants, is to find like a
Yes.
life partner, not just someone
Yeah,
to
exactly.
carry out the experiment, which is
Yeah,
interesting.
that's what she really wants. She wants to be given the resources to them pay for the dates, them, you know.
pay for this big house that she's living in because that's not her house.
Yeah.
That's a set.
She's definitely taking advantage. And Nathan even says it at one point. He's like, I feel like we don't really know if she's just...
She just wanted to live in her dream home for a couple months while we.
It starts to be unraveled about how it can be tough. Like, she wakes up in the middle of the night and she's like, whatever. But yeah, she seems like she's fine with kids. The problem is the husband. She doesn't have a husband.
Yeah, and then
A
so they do
partner,
the
I guess
dating
you could say.
montage. The eels bit is hilarious. That's hilarious. And then the other one where she goes in this whole thing about the Dead Sea Scrolls or whatever, and the guy just sits there silently for a long ass time. That's really funny.
The way they cut that together was so
they
great.
just linger on him. Like,
Yeah, because
sitting
she's
there,
just
like,
going
looking
on
around.
about her passion, and he's like nothing.
And then we got to talk about Robin, who is the becomes one of the main characters of this episode, one of the main figures. He's a interesting person for sure. They
I've met
bonded
people like
over
Robin.
their religious stuff, which is off-putting to me immediately. They got too much Jesus in them. Yeah, his number thing is interesting. He definitely has
88.
A screw loose when it comes from it. Yeah, the cutting together of their car ride of just all the different numbers.
So beautiful. It's so good.
Genuinely, I was kind of feeling like afraid for Nathan in that moment. I was like, because he's the type of like religious where like I don't want to be around someone that religious.
Me neither.
It's a red flag for me. It's like warning sign.
Well, also he was like religious, but not respectful, and not like there were a lot of things that he did in his life that were pretty tainted and like poisonous. Like, and then he gets in a huge fight with his roommate,
over the numbers is the
it's
crazy
so
part.
good.
When he says I told him the truth that his demon doesn't like the truth. It was such a crazy argument, especially to like have on camera. I wonder if the roommate brought it up while the camera was there, because he was like, someone's got to understand my side of this.
Yeah, someone has to unravel this.
He's like, I want
bullshit.
this documented so that he can't be like act like he's
and honestly
the victim
good.
here.
I'm right there with the roommate. I love what he was saying.
Roommate,
Yeah, what he was saying is totally true. It's like, why don't you just experience the moments that you have with her rather than attributing it to some godlike number or something like that?
Yeah. Well, and didn't Robin say his whole problem with the roommate was that he was an atheist or whatever, or he just like wasn't as religious? And that shows the type of Christian that Robin is, where he's the kind that's really forcing his religion onto other people, which is kind of like the dominant thing in the U.S. right now with like all these lawmakers and the Supreme Court are all trying to force their religion on people too, with the whole abortion thing is all Christian nationalist driven. Just fucking like, get your religion away from me.
Yeah, right. Honestly, we're getting closer and closer to the imbalance of church and state. It's horrible.
That has been erased. That is such a myth that we have any separation of church and state. But, well, okay, I'm going to go off on a whole diatribe.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Well,
What I wanted to say was
let's try to focus on because I'll start
What's
ranting.
weird to me is he's so deeply religious, and yet he does things that are so contradictory to most traditional religious people, like smoking, drinking, having sex before marriage, dating merely for sex, and like, how he calls himself attractive. That moment is the biggest moment of cringe in all of TV history. She's just like, and he's like, well, I'm attractive, so. It's like, this guy is deeply troubled, and I feel for him. I feel bad that how troubled he is.
I feel bad on one end, but I also think he's just a scumbag who's used to having things his way and pushing his views on people, and I don't like him for that reason. But
I think he just has deep insecurities and probably some pretty intense family issues or traumatic experiences that he feels like God is going to solve for him. We're going to get into some we're both atheists. We're both going to get into some religious shit here if we don't.
I'm going to try not to
soon.
go full ranty. I guess let me plug my book real quick.
Let me plug my book real quick.
Let me plug my book real quick. So I just wrote I just had it published, a horror novel, South of Mason-Dixon. You can grab yourself a copy. You find a link down in the description. I'm mentioning this at this point in the discussion because I like to put a lot of social commentary in my writing, and this book is a lot about like Christian nationalism in the U.S. and its intersection with homophobia and whatnot.
And also,
I guess my other book there too, The Fall Plot. You can check out both books. Yeah. There will be links to both in the description.
Well, this is his first book. This is his second book. They're both great. I haven't finished this book just yet because I'm a slow reader. But Follow Polite, beautiful. Look at the fucking back. Guys, do I even have to? All on Amazon. Get your copy.
yeah, there'll be links in the description if you want to check out both of those. But anyway, that's enough plugging. We can get back to the rehearsal. I found it really interesting, the specific disagreement that the two of them had, because they did seem like they were actually a pretty good fit. I don't like either of them, but they did seem like an okay couple as far as as far as like they were on the same wavelength of the religious stuff, and they both seemed.
She
like
was
a little,
totally buying into the whole numbers thing too. Which
yeah,
I was
absolutely,
like, oh,
she was buying into it. Which, I mean, yeah, you have to be kind of impressionable to buy into religion to that extreme of a degree, anyway. But yeah, the fact that she was like immediately getting on board with the numbers thing. I think she's pretty extreme too, just in a different way. The numerology thing isn't necessarily part of like Christianity. That's something else. That's like a different. That can be like QAnon vibes, you know, like conspiracy.
That's like QAnon. That's like more hippie type situation. Like some people, and he definitely seems that like peace, loving, love, peace.
Well, see, I think he's a fraud though. I think he tries to put up this front of being like a peace loving guy. Meanwhile, he's like forcing his views on people and picking fights with his roommate and stuff.
Yes. It's like he's clearly has anger issues, but he's putting up a front because he's trying to solve that externally.
Yeah, and he's trying to put up this front of he's this like pious, you know, good-hearted religious guy. Meanwhile, he's throwing out the whole no sex before marriage thing, which is like one of the biggest parts of it.
Right,
and he's completely disregarding it. And that's why that disagreement over the two of them over that topic was so interesting, because it shows like what he's really there for. You know, he's
right. Is he really just there to? Is he even religious, or is he just trying to say all the right things to fuck religious women? Maybe he's got a kink for religious women.
I think he is religious. A lot of religious people are extremely hypocritical. I think he is religious, but I think he's just like, you know, blatantly hypocritical. Let's talk about the moment he actually does move into the house for just like one night, I think, right? It was just like one night.
Barely a night.
I was ready to give him some credit when he was like getting up several times to go take care of the baby. You know, I was ready to be like, okay, he actually is... He's doing a good job here. He is actually.
But why was
doing
he
something.
The only one getting up to take care of the baby? That's what I want to know. Why was she like, yeah, you got to take care of the baby tonight? Like, wouldn't it be equal?
I think the idea was you take care of the baby tonight, and then I'll do it tomorrow night. But he didn't make it to tomorrow night. You know, I think that was the idea, as opposed to I'll wake up the first time, you wake up the second time, which is another way they could have done it, which maybe that would have been easier for him or whatever. But like I was ready to give him some credit, and then the way he leaves in the middle of the night was so ridiculous. I was like, okay, you just lost any goodwill you were coming close to.
I mean, I don't blame him. The guy probably wasn't ready for that.
No, I mean, it's a crazy experience. Like you meet this woman, and she's immediately asking you to like raise her baby for her. Like that's crazy. So yeah, you can't really blame him.
A robot baby.
A robot baby. Yeah,
like,
you're gonna wake up constantly all night for something that's not even a living creature. Yeah.
So overall, I would say first episode and second episode were great. And depending on how the rest of the parts go for the second episode, I will say the second episode's my favorite so far. But I don't know. They're both great.
Yeah, we need to see part two. That's the thing. It's kind of hard to like pit them against each other because we're getting a full story in one, and then we're only getting half the story.
Yeah, like I like the way they wrapped up the first episode. It was good.
I love the first episode. I mean, I love both of them, and I can't wait for the next episode tomorrow night.
Me too. I'm very excited.
So those were our thoughts on The Rehearsal thus far, those two episodes. Again, if you ignored our suggestion and watch this without watching part one first, maybe you'll go back and watch part one now if you want more talk on Nathan Fielder. These are going to be two very long videos, I think. So it's plenty of content about The Rehearsal to go through. Let's step back and realize that we just talked about 2 episodes of a TV show for much longer than the TV show episodes are. You know, like the's that much to say about them.
I think in total we've recorded for probably 6 or 7 hours. I don't know.
We've spent like 6 or 6 or 7 hours we've spent talking about this shit.
Which Sam and I probably would have done if we were just like roommates and hanging out and just chatting for 6 straight hours about Nathan
about this. Yeah, this is totally a conversation we would have had anyway. Maybe a little less structured, but we would have had this conversation regardless. It's that kind of show. It is like they used to talk about how like water cooler TV. That idea of like you watch an episode and then you go talk about it afterwards. That is one of the benefits of TV airing one episode at a time versus the binge watch format. Is you do have that water cooler thing, and I like that HBO.
Nathan for you, the new Lost.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much.
Or no, The Rehearsal is the new Lost.
So yeah, thanks for watching. Subscribe, stick around for more stuff. See you next time. So long.
Bye.